Hello and welcome into our first edition of Catamount Football today as we talk Western Carolina Catamount football with head coach Mark Spear. I'm your host Daniel Hooker, and coach, we haven't had a whole lot of chance to talk since our blackout Facebook Live event where we unveiled those blackout uniforms. Let's take a quick rewind and go back and let's talk about the Hawaii trip. Before we talk about the Hawaii ball game, let's talk about that trip in general. I know a logistical nightmare getting the team from the East Coast all the way out to Hawaii, but what a beautiful place. Took a little bit of heaven to paradise.
Well, number one, I want to thank Randy Eaton. It was a great trip. It was like a bowl game, and Randy spared no expenses. Our players traveled first class. We ate great out there. We got to go see the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor, and took our guys to the women's volleyball tournament there. And just the hotel and how we traveled, it was a tremendous experience that those players will remember the rest of their lives, and coaches. It was just a great experience, and that's something Randy always preaches here at Western Carolina is the student-athlete experience on and off the field. So, we want to thank Randy and the Catamount Club and all our donors and the alumni that went. I mean, we had a great showing out there in Hawaii at Aloha Stadium. So it is definitely an experience our players will remember. And, I enjoyed there at Pearl Harbor watching our players. I'd told them about Pearl Harbor and the reverence of it. And, a lot of them hear it, but they don't really know truly what Pearl Harbor's about. And to watch those 64 players, I was watching them, and it was pretty cool to see the respect they had and what it, that monument and that, ship down there at the bottom of the water there with those soldiers and sailors still in it. It meant something to those players, and that's something they'll remember the rest of their lives. So it was just a great experience.
Coach, looking at the ball game, obviously a tough night for the Catamounts. It really felt like we couldn't get out of our own way. We had some special teams issues, moved the ball between the 10s perhaps up and down the field, but I know frustrating night that way. Turnovers and special teams really hurt us.
Well, it was a lot more competitive ball game than the score appeared to be. But at the end of the day, like I told our team, this game's about scoring points, and that's what we failed to do. Our offense, as you said, would drive up and down the field. Once we got in the red zone, we couldn't convert on touchdowns. We missed 4 makeable field goals, 3 of them blocked. 1 of them blocked for a touchdown for Hawaii. Another very makeable field goal missed. So you're talking about 12 points right there in missed field goals, plus you give them 6 points for a touchdown. You're talking about 18 phantom points right there. And if we have those 18 points, it's a different ball game. And, we had a pick 6 on our defense that during the return, we had a block in the back by one of our players, which took 6 more points off the game. So, are off the board. So with that being said, there's anywhere of a swing of 18 to 23 points that, because of mistakes on our part, give credit to Hawaii. I mean, those guys go hard, but they were low kicks. The first field goal was a protection issue. The rest of them were just low kicks or missed kicks. And, you take those points away, or those 4 or 5 plays in that game go different. We might could have come out there with a victory. I thought Tyree played really well. He had 1 bad mistake. We had 3 turnovers. One of them was really bad, and he knew as soon as he threw it, they ran down to about the 10-yard line. But other than that, I thought he played extremely well. And you looked at the 41 points, and everybody's like, well, where's our defense? Well, 14 of the 41 you can't really attribute to our defense, between block kicks and turnovers, putting our defense in a bind. So if you didn't see the game, you're saying, well, man, that wasn't much of a game. But if you were there, you saw that it was a very competitive football game, and we belonged on the field there. And, I thought our guys did some really good things there in Hawaii. So I was proud of their effort. I was proud how they conducted themselves, because there was so many distractions just waiting to happen there on that type of trip, and being over there as long as we were. And I thought our guys were very focused, and we had zero issues with our players and distractions. Going to a place like Hawaii where distractions are so easy. So I really like the maturity of our football team, but it was a great experience. And I know we're getting ready to talk about it, but we've got to be able to put together road games and go on the road and beat an opponent. We've played well, but since our staff's been here, we hadn't been a very good road team. And as I went back and looked at why, turnovers are a big issue on a lot of our road games. And I'm talking about SoCon games or mid-major kind of schools. Now, you go play Alabama, you got to play your very best game, and they've got to be off a little bit. But the mid-majors, the South Floridas, the Hawaiis, East Carolinas, and our Southern Conference opponents, for whatever reason, we tend to turn the ball over more than we do here at E.J. Whitmire. Why that is, I don't know, but we're really concentrating on that as we go into the Gardner-Webb. And, I told them, I said, there's one more instance there at Hawaii. Even with the field goal issues, you can't turn the ball over 3 times against a team like Hawaii and expect to win. So just a lot of stuff coming out of that Hawaii game that I feel like we got corrected in the Davidson game, and we got to continue to work on as we're getting ready for Gardner-Webb.
Of course, you mentioned the defense coming up with a sack on the very first play from scrimmage, also 2 interceptions in that game. You mentioned Tyree Adams, SoCon Player of the Week for the offensive side in the conference after that game. Then you fast forward, Coach, you mentioned the Davidson game. Let's talk about that game. You talk about storylines and maybe distractions as well coming into that one. A lot of storylines. You're coming home after a short week and a long trip, and everybody wondered, how will you handle coming back from Honolulu, getting ready for Davidson on a short week? You got the blackout uniforms, a lot of buzz about that. You go with white cleats. You've got Cam Brown on campus. You got Adam Palmer running out the flag. A lot of storylines going into that ball game, but it turned out to be a pretty good Saturday in Cullowhee.
Well, I was awful proud of how our players played for 60 minutes. That was the biggest positive that, as we look at it, came out of the Davidson game. Sometimes when a football team jumps out to a big lead of 28-0, they get sloppy. A lot of pre and post snap penalties. You get guys that start trying to get big plays. Instead of just doing their job, they go for interceptions instead of tackles, or a quarterback's going to try to throw a ball he wouldn't normally throw, because you get in that comfort zone of having a big lead, and you want your name in the paper, you want to make the big play, and sometimes you lose focus and that concentration. And I told him, I said, this was just a game last year. We're getting ready to go up 28-3 last year on East Tennessee State. They're in the first half, and we have a turnover on the road and end up losing the football game. And that's what I was proud of this group this year, is when we got that lead, they didn't let up, and they kept executing at a high level. Tyree threw some great deep balls. Me and Brad Glenn were talking this week. There's a lot of times in practice on air, he doesn't throw as many and complete as many deep balls as he did Saturday, and a couple of those deep balls had good coverage on them. It wasn't like they were wide open. Davidson's defenders were there playing good coverage, and he threw it right where it had to be. And so I think, again, our offense executed at a high level for 60 minutes. And when some backups came in, it didn't get sloppy. They continued to execute at a high level. And a lot of these backups are going to be counted on as we go on, throughout the year. So it was good to see that they came in and executed. So that was the biggest thing coming out of the Davidson game, is that we played for 60 minutes executing, and it didn't matter who was in the ball game. They went in and used it as an opportunity for our team to get better and execute at a high level. So, and again, as you said, how would we come back from Davidson? You know, it was great come back from, Hawaii. You know, I thought our guys handled that very well. They listened to what we were telling them about getting in their sleep habits and getting back on our time. They were very focused in that. They didn't just come home and go to bed. They stayed up. They did what we asked them to do, and that's what a mature football team with good leadership does. You know, Cam Brown coming back, that just added to our guys' excitement level, because there's a guy battling cancer, and it was like he'd been here for 4 years. Our guys, you know, had only met him a couple times on official visits and been up for the spring game, but they surrounded him like he had been here for 4 years, and it was just awful cool to see the interaction there. And so our guys handled the distractions, as you say, possible distractions, very well, and went out and played a complete ball game against Davidson. So obviously that fired us up as a coaching staff to come home and get win number one for the season, win number one back at home in front of a great crowd. I thought, as always, the Catamount Nation was great, but it seemed like our student body was in full force, like they haven't quite been the last couple of years, and student body was awesome. And I hope that trend continues, because they were there in their black and having a good time, and I thought it was they did an outstanding job. So great crowd. Fireworks were on the field, fireworks after. You know, it was my 22nd wedding anniversary, Zeb's birthday, my oldest son. So it was a great weekend for the Spear family.
Well, Coach, you talked about Tyree Adams and the job that he did with a lot of those balls that were dropping into the week one. He might have been a little high, a little amped up playing there on a Pro Bowl type of field, but really right on the money. But it also has to help when he could turn around and hand the ball to a guy like Detrez Newsome, who goes for a school record 288 yards.
Well, you know, Detrez is a guy that can change the game at any moment, and he did Saturday. But a lot of that comes from the Hawaii game, and what I mean by that is, I tell our players all the time, your film is your resume. What is next week's opponent going to see on this week's film? That's who you are. You know, you make us all look good. You hide those warts well in the media, but that next opponent, all they see is that film. Well, what I think Davidson saw is we've got to stop Tyree Adams. And because he had a great day running the football against Hawaii. And Davidson was geared to stop Tyree Adams out on the edge. As a result, Detrez Newsome has a big day. You know, a lot of them just right up the middle. Number one, our offensive line did a great job, you know, blocking up front. But Detrez, they got him to the second level, and then he makes somebody miss and goes to the house. And a lot of that was because Davidson said, we've got to stop Tyree on the edges. And what the Davidson game does, I feel like, for Gardner-Webb now is, you know, number one, as this thing progresses, and this is how I talk to our players, is now they're going to see what Tyree can do on the perimeter in the option game, looking at a Hawaii film. Now, off the Davidson film, you know, everybody kind of knows Detrez's speed and the power he runs with. They saw it again, but they also saw how Tyree can drop that deep ball in. Now, hopefully that presents problems for the next several coordinators, defense coordinators that are watching, is who do you stop? Do you stop, you know, the perimeter run game? Do you stop Detrez up the middle? Now I can't creep my safeties down because Tyree has proven that his precision in dropping the deep ball in there. Now I'm going to keep a safety back to help double coverage, give our corners some support. So when you operate at a high level and show your opponents that, hey, we can beat you in several ways, that really stresses out a defense coordinator. I mean, we're doing the same thing this week, you know, getting ready for Gardner-Webb's quarterback, who is an outstanding running quarterback. He's our leading rusher and is a good thrower. So you're sitting there trying to decide, pick your poison, as a defense coordinators call it, you know. And so the combination of the two games from our offense, where against Hawaii we were effective at running the ball in the perimeter. Now we come back, Davidson, you know, more of an inside run game was really big for us, and then Tyree being able to drop the deep balls in with precision, that makes defenses have to cover the entire field from sideline to sideline, all the way to the goal line with your deep game. So now the deal is keep that going, and the other part is Coach Glenn and them have to do a great job sitting in the box saying, okay, here's what their defense is geared up to stop this week, so now we've got to try to hurl them in this fashion. So a lot of good things. You're sitting here 1-1, but a lot of good things have come out of both ball games for us.
Yeah, speaking of good things, Western Carolina's offense leading the nation right now in total yards per ball game. And Coach, a lot of talk about the offense, but you got to give a tip of the cap to what the job the defense has done. Back-to-back weeks with 2 interceptions. Blake Gideon says, let's just go out and lead the country in interceptions this year. Wants to get his corners involved. It's been mostly safety so far, but again, defense has done the job.
Well, we're so much further ahead defensively right now. We've still got to get better. You know, there's times that our defense, they'll get to where they're wanting to go make plays, and you know, there's times maybe they go for an interception when they should just tackle the guy. You know, sometimes it's still a win defensively if the receiver catches the ball and you tackle him. If you take a chance to go for an interception and you know, you don't get that interception, it's kind of boom or bust. And you know, our deal on defense is just consistency. It's only, you know, we're 2 games into a brand new scheme, you know, a brand new 3-4 defense, and our defense is still learning. There's still the nuances. You know, they know our defense, the nuts and bolts of our defense, but with every new offense that we're going against, you're learning the nuances of how our defense, you know, operates against that particular offensive scheme. So, you know, we've just got to continue each week to get better and better on defense and gain more and more confidence on defense. But I think our defense is playing really hard. You know, we're flying around, we're hitting people. That's the biggest thing you're seeing on film. There's first 2 ball games, there's been some licks thrown at Hawaii and at Davidson that some offenses have gotten hit. And the more you put that on film, the more that creates a wide receiver, as he's going to catch it, to take that peek to see, am I about to get hit? And the more of that stuff you put on film, you know, the more that helps you down the road. And you know, I'm just proud of our defense. I think both ball games, our defensive staff have made good halftime adjustments, and it's more just cleaning stuff up. You know, getting in and saying, here's the plays that's hurting us and why. And now let's get them cleaned up. In both ball games, you've seen a much better second half defense than first half. And that's credit to our players that they're able to hear what the coaches are saying and implement, you know, minor adjustments defensively to help shut down offenses in the second half. And to win big ball games, you got to get better as the ball game goes on. So, you know, it's always about starting fast and finishing strong. And, you know, really proud of what the defense is, where they're at. And like I said, got to get better each week. And you know, it's a new offense this week, a third new different type of offense, and with a dynamic quarterback that they're really going to have to contain this week.
Well, Coach, you hit upon that. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Tyrell Maxwell coming in, just like Detrez Newsome for Western Carolina, on that Walter Payton watch list this year. A guy that's very dynamic. It's an offense that hasn't scored a touchdown this year for the Gardner-Webb running Bulldogs, so you know they're coming in hungry. Big challenge coming up with, again, a dual threat quarterback.
Well, he's an outstanding player, senior. He's won a lot of big ball games for them. He's obviously the guy that leads their football team. And, you know, he presents a big challenge. Just like I hope Tyree presents them a challenge, he presents us a big challenge. And, you know, you've got to contain him, and you don't ever just stop a guy like that. You've got to do a good job containing him, not letting him get the big plays. You know, you've got to get a guy like him to 3rd and long to where now you've got a better chance. He's not a guy that just likes to sit in the pocket and throw down the field on 3rd and 8. He's a good thrower, but he's a lot like Tyree. He likes better to be throwing on the boots, on the play actions. You know, he's just more comfortable doing that, just like Ty is for us. So we've got to, number one, try to get them to 3rd and longs. And then we feel like, hey, we've got the advantage, you know, and he's more apt to hurt you on a quarterback draw or quarterback run on 3rd and long than throwing it down the field. So, you know, it isn't a deal to where you just, you know, when you rush the guy, you have got to have very strict pass rush lanes because you're doing a great job maybe covering them, and then your pass rush lanes break down. He finds that seam in there, and boom, he's gone for 14 yards on a 3rd down and 8. And those are the kind of things when you can get a defense frustrated, a defense talking amongst each other. Hey, you know, the secondary, we're covering, you know, y'all got to get some pass rush on that guy. And so, you know, we've got to be very detailed in how we rush him. And then we've got to just do a good job. And then they got running backs that are really good runners. And, you know, you can't just sit there and say, we got to stop Maxwell. That's where it starts, but they can hurt you in a lot of different areas. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough task for our defense. And, you know, they're tough to prepare for, but we're excited about the challenge.
How much do you look at last year, Coach? Obviously a 44-14 win here in Cullowhee, but it was a 17-14 ball game at halftime. It was a strong second half performance. Offense exploded in the second half. How much do you look at that from last year?
Well, last year's was a lot of big plays that you can't always count on. You know, we can't sit here and count on our offense to win us ball games. It's got to be a team effort. It's got to be offense, defense, special teams. Their defense, they play hard. Neither team they've played, North Carolina A&T or Wyoming, have been able to run the ball effectively against them. Both teams have hurt them with big plays like we did last year in the passing game. And, you know, but you can't always count on that. You can't go into a ball game counting on big plays. You've got to be able to run the football. And they're the type defense, they're not going to let you run the football. You know, Wyoming's 27-0 ball game. Wyoming's got the best quarterback in college football. A lot of people say he's probably going to be the top quarterback taken in the draft. He's an outstanding player watching him on film. And Wyoming's trying to run the football. They can't run the football on them. So it's going to take a complete game. And, you know, you look at last year to see what we did well, because you know that's what Gardner-Webb's going to work on stopping this year. They're not going to give us the same things they gave us last year. So we've got to figure out, you know, it's kind of that chess match. Okay, here's what we hurt them on last year. They're not going to let us hurt them on it again this year. So what's their move to what's going to be effective for us? But you look at last year's to see what worked, what you saw presented them problems. I look at last year's to see our matchups, how our guys battled and competed against their personnel. But I think both of us take, because each team's different this year than they were last year. And I think, you know, you put more stock into what happened in the first two ball games than you did last year. Last year's more of a reference point.
Well, Coach, you're looking at a chance to travel down to the Charlotte area, just outside of Charlotte. Good alumni base there in Charlotte. Catamounts traditionally travel well. Looking for a big crowd there at Gardner-Webb on Saturday.
No question. I mean, the Catamount Nation's been awesome. We've created a game day environment in Cullowhee that's as good as anywhere in FCS football, and you know, opposing coaches. It's kind of cool to me, man. Y'all really got it going on, and you know, Cullowhee's a fun place to play now because as a player, whether you're home or away, you like to play in front of a big crowd and a fun crowd. And we've created that atmosphere here at the Wee. Now, you know, what I'm hoping for is that there's more purple in the stands down in Bowling Springs this Saturday than red and black, because like you said, Charlotte's one of our biggest alumni base, and it's right there close from the Hickory, the Asheville, the upstate South Carolina, or Greenville, South Carolina, Spartanburg, Catamounts, and you know, Greensboro. So hopefully we can have a huge crowd there on Saturday, and you know, for what's going to be a great football game. Again, got a lot of respect for Gardner-Webb. Again, we have not been a good road team, and you know, you're not going to be a good road team until you focus on it and start putting together some road wins. And you know, this is a huge task for us. And Gardner-Webb's like us; they play better at home than they do on the road. And so I know they're excited about getting their first win. And you know, we're excited about the opportunity to get our first road win. So that crowd being there, let's try to make it feel like you know, over there on the sidelines, we're at home here in the Wee, because there's a bunch of purple there. So we're looking forward to it, and excited about this opportunity to go play a great Big South opponent, and you know, try to get some bragging rights here in North Carolina in recruiting, and you know, SoCon versus Big South. Carrying that flag as well.
A lot of more storylines as we head to Gardner-Webb, Boiling Springs, North Carolina. We head down to Spangler Stadium. 6 o'clock kickoff. You can hear the game on the Catamount Sports Network. 5 o'clock airtime, 6 o'clock kickoff. Game will also be broadcast on WMYA My 40 throughout the Western North Carolina region. You can also catch a simulcast on BigSouthNetwork.com. All the time we have this week for the coach. I'm Daniel Hooker saying so long. We'll catch you next week right here on Catamount Football Today.